It's not uncommon for someone to look in their senior yearbook and pick out who they think will be the most successful, only to discover how wrong they were 10 years later. Many who we think will be the ones to make it are forgotten or settle for mediocrity. It's a terrible thing to be forgotten, and that's what seems to have happened to the GM Sniper Custom, a mobile suit that had everything going for it. It had the weapons, the numbers, and the looks. So how did it come to this? This is how the GM Sniper Custom fell from the spotlight. In the beginning, when Gundam Battle Operation 2 was first released on console, the highest cost mobile suit was a 500, and there was only one. Back then, 200 to 300 cost lobbies were far more common than today. Some might say that it was a simpler time. From 200 to 300, there were only a few options for support type mobile suits, one of which was a GM Sniper, the original one. It was a solid mobile suit with the best range for its cost. There were some drawbacks, of course. It was slow, the turn rate was even slower, and it was easy to overheat the sniper rifle. Nevertheless, it was a solid support. As the weeks passed, newer mobile suits were added to the game. Over time, 350 and above cost lobbies became more common than the lower ones, and that meant that the GM Sniper couldn't compete in the higher cost lobbies. To remedy this, the GM Sniper Custom was introduced. On paper, it was just as good as the original, but for 300 to 400 cost lobbies. I remember when it was first released seeing so many players using it. The most common thing that I saw was players using its beam gun as a secondary weapon, but that's where the problems first started to show up. With the range of only 100 meters, the beam gun was basically useless. The damage it caused was also weaker than that of the beam spray gun of the regular GM. That wouldn't have been so bad so long as its primary weapon, its R4 type beam rifle, made up for it. Except, it didn't exactly do that. Although the GM Sniper Customs does more damage than the regular GM Sniper rifle, it doesn't stagger unless you charge up the shot. During those 4 seconds it takes to charge up the rifle, you are an easy target because you can't move in all that time. Now, just like the GM Sniper 2, I started practicing to force myself to get good with the R4 type beam rifle. As I said before, it does more damage than the original GM Sniper, but its lack of stagger limits your playstyle. As far as I can tell, you're limited to 2 options. The first option is one where you play the standard support role of providing cover fire from behind the front line. This, however, leaves you wide open to attack by the enemy raids. If the beam rifle could stagger, you might be able to hold off any raids rushing you long enough for a teammate to back you up. Unfortunately, unless the enemy raid gives you 4 seconds to charge up your shot and stays in your line of fire, you aren't going to be able to last long enough for help to arrive. The second option is to move up with your team and fire from close range. On the plus side, if you accidentally shoot a teammate in the back, at least you won't stagger them. Without the stagger option, you can at least aim to cause as much damage per second as you can and let your teammates do the staggering. There's still a little problem with this option though. If you're going to be fighting at close range, then maybe the rifle isn't the best option. Unlike the GM Sniper and the GM Sniper 2, the GM Sniper Custom also comes with the option of using the bazooka as a primary weapon. With the bazooka, you can stun and melee enemies at close range. You can also use a secondary beam gun and head Vulcans to increase your damage on the enemy. Side note, the original GM Sniper does come with the missile launcher. It's not exactly a bazooka, but does pretty much the same thing. Anyways, taking all this into consideration, it might seem that the GM Sniper Custom still has some uses, and that was true, at least for a little while. First of all, at 300 it still has competition with a level 3 GM Sniper that can use level 3 weapons and has a much longer range with its sniper rifle. So as far as long range support goes, the GM Sniper Custom is still outclassed. Secondly, there is another sniper at 300 that surpasses the range of its rifle, and that's the Zaku 1 sniper type. Its own sniper rifle is just as good as the original GM sniper rifle. And for short range, it can also be equipped with the Zaku machine gun long barrel that can stun a lot better than the bazooka, and it also has a shorter cooldown rate in between shots. Well, okay, maybe the GM Sniper isn't the best, but it can still be fun. And there is no level 4 GM Sniper to play in 350 cost lobbies, right? Well, sort of. For one, you can still take a 300 cost mobile suit into a 350 lobby, although it might be severely outclassed depending on what you're using. But what if it's more fun to use the bazooka and melee combination? Okay, true, you can do that with the GM Sniper Custom, or at least you could do that before. For you see, there was another sniper introduced into the game. It was just like the GM Sniper Custom. It even looked just like it. You could even say that it's the exact same mobile suit, but with 2 big missile launchers on its back. Its name was the GM Sniper Custom Missile Launcher, and it can do all the same things. It didn't end there, however, because it had an even better bazooka if you wanted to fight at close range. The regular bazooka takes 6.7 seconds to cool down in between shots, while the rocket bazooka of the GM Sniper Custom Missile Launcher only takes 6 seconds to cool down in between shots. To add another nail in the coffin, the GM Sniper Custom missile launcher goes between 350 to 400, which are the last two levels of the regular Sniper Custom. And at 400, there are even more supports for it to compete with. As a result, players stop using the GM Sniper Custom as much. You might see it from time to time, often with the bazooka on smaller maps. Once in a while, players will try using it with a 2-barrel beam gun as a primary weapon, similar to how some GM2 players use it with the machine gun. As of now, it's a lot like seeing an aging car model on the road that was discontinued years ago. In the end, it suffered a similar fate many high school students suffer when they graduate at the top of their class. When they go to their Ivy League universities, they quickly realize they're just one among many fellow students who had similar GPAs. I myself remember having a lot of hope for the GM Sniper Custom when it was first released. Much like the GM Sniper 2, this one is in need of a serious buff. To separate it from the missile launcher version, I would suggest to give its R4 type beam rifle an instant stagger ability. I think this will be possible since the Gundam's beam rifle has different stats when the G3 uses it as a secondary weapon. Also, I think that the custom secondary beam gun should have its range increased, at least double to what it is now. I think that with these two changes it would stand a better chance in the 300 or 400 lobbies, especially now with all the crazy raids that have since been released. I don't think that my suggestions are too crazy, and I doubt it would make it overpowered. What do you think? How can the GM Sniper Custom be made relevant again? That's it for now. Hope to see you all in the next video. As always, this is Mobile Suit K9 heading out.